Welcome to Animal Proof Your Website, being presented by myself, John Henshaw, co-founder of Raven. And today we're going to be looking at the animals that have been visiting us the past few years, the most recent being Hummingbird, and the other two being Penguin and Panda. And so I'm going to talk about how you can not only survive, but thrive in the environment of the Google animals with your website. And we'll start off with Panda. Panda, if you're unaware of exactly what that really targets, it's about content. And it's really interesting because with Panda, it introduced something new where before you could have kind of a mixture of good content and low quality content. You could do all kinds of things. However, it got a little bit out of hand on the marketing and SEO side. And so now with Panda, it actually matters if you fill your site up with kind of junky content and low quality content. One of the things that Google's looking for is basically a site that is all quality, not a site that is doing all kinds of random things. And so this is a kind of a good thing, because what it does is it also kind of forces us webmasters and marketers to go back and actually rethink our content and maybe even clean it up a little bit. And so one of the first things that you'll want to do in regards to Panda is to find duplicate content. So that actually matters. If you have a site that is full of basically the same articles and the same content throughout your site, then you're going to want to take care of that. In most cases, like with WordPress, there is canonicalization going on, and so there won't be a lot of issues with even if there is duplicate content on that site. It's usually created by category, archive pages, that type of thing. So you don't have to worry about it. But for those who aren't and those who don't have that and actually truly do have duplicate content, you're going to want to clean that up. And if they are pages that you don't want to get rid of, then canonicalize them to one core page that represents the one that Google should be looking at and returning in the search results. So what I do is I like to go into Raven and use our site auditor, and after it goes and crawls the site, it does a pretty good job of finding that content, and then you can use that to help clean up your site. The next thing I like to do is look for low traffic content. And the reason why is because a lot of times you can find pages that really just don't perform well. And a lot of times they don't perform well because they aren't relevant to your site. Maybe they're poorly written. They essentially just don't rank well. And so going in and looking at your basically your landing pages in Google Analytics, something you can also do in Raven, you can go in and see the pages that are really performing poorly. That doesn't mean that you're going to try to chuck all the pages that don't have a lot of traffic, but it's a good place to start. It's a good place to look at, do I really need that? Is that really relevant to my site? And so you may want to either get rid of it, redirect it to another page that actually performs well, that maybe is more relevant. You might want to rewrite it. So it's a page that actually makes sense in your information architecture and what you're trying to do. And so you might just want to rewrite it to be a little better. And then you can always no index that content. And relevancy is a big deal content-wise. It's no longer really considered best practice to essentially write about anything and everything, because then the message gets lost, not just with the page, but with the site itself. And so what you're probably going to want to do is kind of go through your site, particularly blogs. Blogs can collect a lot of random pieces of content and posts. And so you'll want to go through that and look for the content that may not be relevant now or may not be relevant anymore. I know that when we looked at our own content, there were plenty of posts that, while very relevant at the time in 2009, aren't relevant anymore. And so those are the type of things, particularly things that aren't evergreen, that, again, you'll want to consider, dumping or rewriting or redirecting. And then there's Rel Author, and I'm sure if you've been breathing into SEO, then you've heard of Authorship from Google. And Rel Author I kind of put in here because I really see this playing a much bigger role in regards to content in general and ranking for Google moving forward. And so basically the reason why is because it's one thing for Google to come in and essentially judge your content and see if it's relevant for them and is it trustworthy and authoritative. But they're starting to rely more on the authors connected to that content. And so one of the things you'll want to do for sure is to make sure that all of the authors, particularly internally, have a Google Plus profile, have the correct linking so that the credit is being due there, as far as that profile is linking to your blog, as them being a contributor to it and you linking back to that profile so that you can get results like the one you're seeing right here. However, even more so moving forward, I think it's probably going to be a really good idea for people to really consider who is writing for their site. Is that person who's writing for it willing to add your site as something they're a contributor to? And are they somebody who is relevant to your subject matter? So things are going to change, I think, moving forward, both in practice and how we seek out authors, but also in how Google actually picks the content they want to show. And so I think Rel Authors are going to play a pretty big role in that. The next one is Penguin. And we got this little guy who apparently loses feathers when he eats your nasty links. And that really sums up what Penguin is about. Penguin is about links. It's about everything from link farming to low quality links to anchor text, how you link. And so the next thing as far as animal proofing your site is to start to take a lot kind of closer look at a much closer look at your links. And so the first thing I like to do is to go look at my backlinks. And so typically I'll use Research Central, which incorporates both Mozscape and Majestic SEO data and kind of combines them. And it gives me scoring data so I can see domain authority and citation flow and trust flow, that type of thing. And then what I'll do is I'll go and I'll sort that to the lowest. And I will look for sites that are just really low quality or low trust and see if that is something that I want to keep that link from. Do I need to do anything about that? Is there something really spammy linking to me? And so that's kind of a nice sort of more manual way you can go in and do that, and then you can take whatever action you think you need to take. However, in the case of a site that has maybe done some sort of risky link building practices, or maybe it looks like they're a victim of somebody attacking them with what is called negative SEO, where people set up really, really bad, spammy, low-quality links just pointing to a particular site, then what they might want to do is use a service like LinkRisk. And what LinkRisk does is it automatically looks for and analyzes all the backlinks that it can find to your site, and then through its own algorithms and sort of blacklists and data that it has already, it will then find any really low quality or even potentially damaging backlinks to your site and then let you know about those. And so from there, what you might do is you might take that list and go to Google Webmaster Tools and upload those backlinks that you essentially want to disavow. And the thing, though, that I like to caution about with this is that this isn't really needed for most sites. I know a lot of people are using the disavow tool and they're really concerned about, again, sort of this idea of negative SEO. But for the vast majority of sites out there, it's really not something that they need to be concerned with. For most sites, it's okay if you have some randomly spammy sites that create links to your site. It's not going to hurt you, particularly if your brand has been out there for a while and you have plenty of valid, legitimate links to your site, especially from, like, in our own industry, if we have somebody linking to us from Search Engine Land or something like that. If you have good, high quality, trustworthy, legitimate links, and then there are these sort of random outliers out there, that's really not going to mess you up in the SERPs. So I wouldn't really worry about it. So be cautious when you use this. Don't just make it something that you always do. I would say that the most relevant typical case would be, I'm an agency. I just got a new client that moved away from their old agency because they were doing risky stuff. They dropped, in the search results. And so they came to us so we could fix it. And so that to me is a much more legitimate use and example of when somebody would actually use this tool. Again, you don't use it because you have 5 or 10 bad sites that you don't want to get penalized for, because you pretty much won't. Anchor text is also a very important component of Penguin in that I would say in the past, one of the easiest ways to game, and by past I mean years ago, easiest ways to game Google was just to give as many links as you could with the most relevant this particular anchor text phrase, and so that has changed over the past couple of years, particularly changed with Penguin, in that it needs to look more natural. The problem with doing link building and focusing on one particular phrase, some sort of short tail phrase, whatever it might be, is that when you reach a certain number of those, it just doesn't look natural. The exception is your brand. The brand is normal. Google's going to handle that normally. But when you start getting into things like SEO tools or something like that, then you start getting into territory where if that's the only keyword phrase that people are linking to you with, then that's going to set off a flag with Google's algorithm. And so what you need to be doing with your links, and particularly the text that's going there, and especially if you're doing actual active link building, is you need to use variety. And you need to break it up a little bit. And it's even okay to have the text you're going for be near the link, not actually be the link. And so mix it up, make it look natural, or let it actually be natural. But one of the things I like to do is I'll go into our link manager, and that will look at all of the basically the anchor text distribution for my links, especially if you've done something with our Backlink Explorer, or you have set up in Google Analytics on Raven. You can make it so that it will actually auto import every day the top 100 referral links, and it will auto import those into the link manager. And so if you have that set up, then you can kind of come back here and check and see the type of links that are being made. And it might be worth your time to reach out to one or more of the people who are linking to you and say, hey, really appreciate you linking to me, blah, blah, blah. Could you maybe, change this? I mean, I'd be really careful about that. But again, if you know the person who's doing that and you're concerned about your anchor text diversity, it might be worth your time to do that. The other thing is the type of links you get. And this has been something that has been coming for a while. Again, I'm not totally sure that it's 100% a part of Penguin, but it is related to Penguin. And so what that has to do with is I could try to get a bunch of links from good but kind of crappy sites in regards to authority and trust, versus if I could just get that particular site, that media site, that company site that is completely relevant to what I do to link to me. And so particularly with Penguin and just the algorithm as it is today, you really want to push for quality over quantity. It is much more worth your time to try to reach out and get those hard to get links than to just get a bunch of other random links. Because if you're just going for quantity, then you may actually you'll either see possibly no change or a worse change especially if it sets off alarms based on the sites that you're getting those links from. So things have really moved into a place of quality in regards to what Google's been doing, and so that's where you need to be focusing your time. And then while as of today, it's not really a ranking factor per se, you want to make sure that you're leveraging social media. And so one of the things that I do all the time is I will use Raven to schedule posts to Twitter, to Facebook, and make sure that I'm being smart about where and how, and I'm actually sharing that data, because the more exposure to your content, the more visibility, the more likely somebody is going to blog about it, is going to reference it, is going to use it in some other manner. So social media has become very much a part of sort of the SEO approach, because the outcome of it can be actual links from people's blogs and sites. So the last animal, which is the most recent little guy to join the Google algo family, is the Hummingbird. And the Hummingbird is kind of an interesting update, because it's kind of a combination of caffeine, which is just an overhaul of the entire system, but it's also a bit of just being smarter in general, and how it actually understands what a person's query is and returns that information. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And my first piece of advice is to write really focused content. So in the past, a lot of times we would focus on short tail. However, the way people are searching now, and the way Google is working, the queries themselves are becoming more long tail. They're becoming more conversational. They are becoming more long tail in the sense of it's definitely more than 2 or 3 words what people are inputting. And in the past, you could write something that was very generalized, and it might rank for all kinds of different terms, particularly short tail terms. Now, with the onset, particularly of Hummingbird, we're seeing that the results, the queries are very specific, and so are the results. And the results themselves are highly focused on a particular answer that is trying to be, solved. And so the recommendation here is write something that really addresses a very specific thing, and don't be generalized by it. The example we have right here is where we're using scribe. There's we're going for this specific long tail term and using scribe to analyze that content to make sure that we're addressing that in our content. And the other part is semantic diversity. So it's not simply sort of a long tail play. It's also not sticking to the same phrase over and over and over again. And it used to be an issue that you wouldn't want to do that because you were keyword stuffing. Now it has to do with making sure that Google understands all aspects of this particular piece of content and what it is you're trying to answer and say. And so I have a picture of a thesaurus here because you're going to need to break this out when you write your content. If there are alternative ways to express something, whether it be grammar or descriptive, then you're going to want to try to work that into your content. So again, it's getting back to just writing good content in general, but in this case, view this as a way to help Googlebot fully understand what it is you're trying to say with that particular piece of content instead of just sticking to a singular phrase. So use that. The next one is it's a little bit about Hummingbird, but it's also just best practice. It's where things have gone and how you need to be building links to your site. So since Hummingbird is about connecting relationships with the query, with the intention, the understanding of what the person is actually asking the search engine for. The same applies to who is linking to you. And so I put this little sort of diagram together to kind of give you an example of a way that would be sort of a more modern way of link building. And that is, let's say I have a page that's written about the terrible twos. Well, I'm going to want to get links from, say, sort of like mommy blogs, think Blogger. I'm going to want to get links from possibly just strictly parenting sites, sites that are just very specific about parenting tips, those type of things. Lifestyle sites in general, and media, of course, if I can get them. Those are some of the more choice links that you possibly get. And then you don't even necessarily need links. You can actually benefit from simply being mentioned on one of those sites, and we call that sort of a brand citation. And that's why it's important to put out press releases. That's why it's important to get the word out on anything you're doing without begging for a link from that person. The fact that you were mentioned, that whether it's your name and your company, your brand, can be related back to your site and back to that content. And so as we look at Hummingbird and these other updates and look towards the future of getting a page to rank, it doesn't take a huge amount of links. What it takes is relevant sites that are mentioning you, that are linking to you, and that are relevant also to the content that you're writing. And so smart, relevant links, do this through, whatever typical outreach strategies that you use, tactics you use, through PR, social, email, those type of things. And then the last part is, again, not necessarily completely related to the three animals. They're just things to make sure that you also do. They are very important in the grand scheme of everything we've talked about. And that is making sure that your site is fast, particularly when it comes to the mobile experience. So you also want to make sure it's responsive. You want to have a good user experience, which will translate into high user engagement. That's something that they're looking at. You don't want for somebody to come in and then bounce right back to the search results. You don't want somebody to go to your site and there's just too many ads, there's too many things going on, and they just give up. You also want to consider using structured data on your site, which like schema.org, because that is starting to play a big role in knowledge graph, in the potential to have rich snippets in the search results. And then the last thing would be signals. Always be thinking about signals in regards to what is Google looking for in regards to trust and authority, and what can I do? And something as simple as having a privacy policy, the type of things that legitimize your site to Google to trust you even more. And so the idea around this is that you do all the things that we talked about today, including these, and then you will end up hitting all the important signals. The sum of those signals will tell Google that your site, your page, your content is trustworthy, and they should really consider giving that as a top result over the thousands, or in some cases millions, of other results. And so if you do it right, you win. So I'm going to move into Q&A. This is a re-recording of a webinar that we did, and so I'm just going to go over some of the questions that were asked during that webinar, because they were pretty good. And the first question was asked by, is this a real name? Dick Pepper. And his question was a social media link question, and that is, with link shorteners, are the links, he wanted to know, how does it affect the site link value rather than direct link? I think what he was really trying to ask is it okay to use URL shorteners out there, does that somehow maybe not pass page rank, particularly as it relates to social networks and that type of thing? And so my answer to that is link shorteners really don't mess anything up, but you also aren't going to be getting really any value from them, particularly from a social network. And the reason why you use URL shorteners is because you can attach campaign variables to them. That's really the main point. And I remember somebody had asked a couple weeks ago, why do I need to use a URL shortener when Twitter changes them to the taco, shortened links? And the reason for that is because that's for Twitter's analytics. They're doing that for themselves. They're doing that to shorten it, but also for their own analytics. And so it is important and valuable to use URL shorteners because you can add those campaign variables, which will then show up in Google Analytics. And so when you're sharing these links, when you're sharing that content, that you can actually see when people click on those links, like how many people clicked on them from Twitter and other places where you place that URL shortener. And then if you're using if you have your URL shortener set up correctly or you're using a service like Bitly, then those redirect anyways, and you're fine. And then the last part, you don't really need to worry about it that much, particularly with social networks, because they're not passing any, I would say, page rank value or anything like that. I mean, it's those are all no followed, and you're not really getting anything from it. It's just marketing and visibility. So it's nothing to concern yourself with. The next question is from Travis Fenseth. I probably just totally destroyed that name. Sorry, Travis, because I actually know who you are. And he wanted me to talk a little more about the knowledge graph and how it works and how it affects SEO. And so this is a really interesting one to me because there's a whole lot of changes going on in this area. And you kind of have to step back and look at what Google is doing and what they're trying to kind of accomplish with the knowledge graph and other similar efforts. And so with the knowledge graph, the first thing you do is you go there and you do a search for something, common, like a person, a famous person, or a movie. And when you get the result, it's this table. It's like this information on the right side of your screen. And what happens when you click on one of those pieces of information? Well, instead of actually going to the site that provided that information, all it does is present you with a new search result. So you stay at Google. You don't actually go anywhere else. And so I think that little piece of information right there is indicative with what's going on with the knowledge graph, which is Google wants to keep you on their site. And if you look at other things that are going on with Google, then you can see the same thing happening, which is sometimes, we just had I'm in Nashville and Titans are an NFL team. And so I wasn't at the TV. I wanted to know what the score was, or I wanted to know, I can't remember what it was, or I wanted to know when the next game was. I typed in Titans schedule and that pulled up their schedule in the next few games. Well, they pulled that from some site, but I didn't visit it. And then I do remember it was Sunday. I typed in Titans score and I had the score right there. I didn't have to go anywhere. To their credit, there were 2 links that said live recap or live something. And if I clicked that would actually take me to ESPN, but I got the basic information that I wanted and I stayed there. Now take this further with Google Plus and all of the other services and things they're doing and having your Google account. Then what happens is you find yourself always on Google. I'm checking my email. I'm on Gmail. I am working on my documents. I'm even collaborating with other people, and I'm doing that through Drive. And I might be chatting with people. I'm doing that through, I guess, what they call Hangouts now. I am looking at news. I could be stuck, just looking at news.google. and that kind of gives me the headlines and the things I want to know about. But the point is that there's this bar now, that where if I want to be social and I want to be sharing things or waste my time looking at interesting things that other people are posting, then I'm on Google+. And so there is an effort, which is sound business sense from their part, to keep you on their properties. And so keeping that in mind and getting back to the original question, so how does that affect SEO? Well, some might think that maybe I shouldn't be using structured data because they're going to steal that data and use that for their own purposes and they'll never get to my site. I think that is probably a little short-sighted. I can see the argument there, or the concern if you were, say, in Expedia, where Google's kind of moving into that territory. But for the most part, using structured data is a wise move. It still works quite well for most things. The example I like to give is with the recipe schema structure. I can do a search for a particular type of salad, and if I'm using structured data, then a picture of that salad is going to show up. If I had a review, it might show a starred review, and it's also going to have the ingredients. And one of the coolest things that Google does now is they list the ingredients on the side for those particular searches, and then I can actually sort my results based on those ingredients, which is being pulled from my structured info. And then, hopefully what that person is looking for is the recipe I have, and then they will click on that to get that full recipe and to learn how to make it and bake it and that type of thing. So there's a lot of advantages to still using structured data for most sites and for most people. And so like I said, keeping in mind that their ultimate goal is to keep you there on their site, but that it's really not affecting too many people in too many ways. I mean, it's kind of a wait and see kind of thing, which is where they're going to end up going with that. I seriously doubt they're going to go down a road where they're not going to send any more traffic to anybody, because I think they'll have an uprising against them from sites owners and companies and so on. So I doubt it's going to get too bad. If we were to look at a scenario where it did end up being like that, then you adjust and you change, and it may end up being that somewhere down the road we change our tactics, and the tactics are more around, well, if I'm going to be on there, then I need to make it in a way that I can still meet my goals and somebody can take action even if they don't hit my site. And I've used the example before of calls to action that G+ provides. There's a whole list of things that you can do when you post to G+. So then they have this in mind. So for example, I can set up a post to G+ where the person can write on the post, give me their email address and sign up for my newsletter. Well, I just captured them. I just captured that lead. And so like I said, there are a ton of things that people can do. And even Gmail has certain actions that can show up even just line by line when people are viewing things. So it's important to Google that people can still do the things they can do. And I think it's important to them that they don't start losing good content and people find other ways to bring visibility to their site. So I doubt it's going to become horrible, but I do think that as we move forward with the knowledge graph, we're going to see more people possibly losing traffic to their site from that. So next question is from Donald McGregor, and he asked, John, can we hear your take on the perceived correlation between Hummingbird and the increase of not provided, between Hummingbird and increase not provided? Okay, so I don't know how they really correlate. The not provided is really just an absence of data. So the fact that we have not provided just simply means that we aren't able to see the keywords that people are searching for, and therefore we also can't apply those to which keywords are converting the best. And so that's very frustrating. There are ways sort of around it. They aren't great. They can provide some insight. For example, you could take data from Google Webmaster tools and associate that, with the landing pages, and then you go over to GA and you can look at the landing pages, associate that with organic goal conversions and try to combine that. But beyond that, there's nothing really accurate that's left out there. And then, in regards to Hummingbird, Hummingbird is, it may be affecting how many people are finding your pages now, but it's a completely different issue. I guess the only thing I can say is bad timing. So, yes, the keyword information might be changing, and now we don't know it because of not provided. But that's the best I can associate the two together with. Scott Foster asks, with Schema, should testimonials be marked up to get stars and SERPs? Or is this only tied to local reviews? So anytime you can do a review on any type of other entity, you should. Whether or not they're going to show stars with that, I don't know. It's one of those things where, if you're starting to see where they're showing reviews, then great. I would just do it anyways for the day that they do start doing that. But I'd also, going back to the structured data component and that whole knowledge graph thing, Google doesn't have to be the only game in town in regards to that kind of data. There are plenty of other new apps, mobile apps, new services that are going to be coming online in the near future that are going to be using that data. They aren't the only people indexing the web. And so using that data can bring you visibility and traffic from other sources than just Google. And so if it makes sense, if it's something that could hopefully potentially be used by Google and even other services, then use it. Go ahead and put it on there, especially if it makes sense visually on your own site. If you have something on your site that can be reviewed or can have an opinion or a starred type of rating, then do it. And if you do that, then use structured data. It just makes sense to use that if it's something you already have on your page. Last one's it's like also Schema, great help, local search. Yeah, okay. Okay, last one is also someone asked if you could share any upcoming Raven news. Of course I can. The biggest thing we're working on right now is with reports. And so if you've been following us, you know that we have this amazing new UI. I love it. The guys here did just an amazing job. Still excited about it. And so our customers, we had a lot of people raving about it, a huge amount of new customers from it, and even a lot of people coming back to us, which has been great. We introduced a site auditor, which has been in beta. That's something we're trying to finish up. We have a nice long list of feature requests that people would like to see done. That's why we left it in beta. We also wanted to make sure that it could handle large crawls, and so that's why we've limited the crawls during beta. But we're looking to take that out of beta hopefully soon and to implement those features and also greatly increase the crawl number that you could do per site. So that is definitely one. Another one I can talk about has to do with reports. And our reporting system is way overdue for a major update. And we are actually rewriting it from the ground up. And it's going to include not just a huge amount more of what you can actually report on from your analytics, but we're talking about a new way to visually represent the reports, which is going to be awesome. We are talking about a new way to build reports. And so it is our main priority right now as far as what we're working on, and I'm incredibly excited about it. I'm the ETA on that is maybe by the end of the year, but definitely early 2014, and it's going to be very much worth the wait. It's going to be spectacular. We are continuing to do a whole lot more around our social tools, and so you're going to see a lot of things come online there. We're working on LinkedIn, working on a lot of other things, kind of small but really awesome features that people have been asking for a long time, and so you're going to see a lot of movement there. And then everything else is top secret. So So those are the things I could tell you about, which are actually pretty big, and I think everybody's going to love. And then we have several other things that we're working on that people are going to like, that you're going to see later in 2014. So thank you for listening and coming to this session or episode of Raven's Marketing Flight School. And I hope you learned a lot. And check out our other upcoming webinars and some of the ones that have been recorded to learn a lot more. Thanks.